go ahead. Hi, everyone. I'm Chloë Edmonson. I'm an assistant professor of theater history and dramaturgy here at Theater UCF. Tonight, I'll be moderating this talkback for our reading of James Imes's Kill Move Paradise. I hope you enjoyed the show. It was our final virtual reading in our series of plays chosen to amplify, empower, illuminate. 4 plays, many diverse voices. Today, we have a few members of the cast and creative team on our panel. Each panelist will introduce themselves first and share some thoughts about the process of working on the production and what it meant to them. Following their remarks, we will open the discussion for questions from all of you. If you would like to submit a question, click on Q&A and type it in. You can see the questions posted by other folks as well, and you can upvote any questions that you find interesting or exciting. You can also use the chat area to post your comments or thoughts and positive vibes. However, the questions should be in the Q&A question, otherwise we might not see them. This talkback is being recorded and the link will be posted on the theater web page after the live event is over. And please remember to keep all questions and comments respectful and relevant to the topic. So now let's just, we've got a small intimate group in here, which is great. So I think we can just sort of randomly introduce yourselves and let's do this.
Hello, my name is Gerald and I played the character of Daz. Some things that I met along the journey of playing this character, I'd never realized that I've never been in a cast that has been predominantly with colored people, and it was really interesting to see like everyone's take on everything and how there was a play that was written for me and like for us, but for me that like it was stuff that I could relate to, and like that is not normal. It was like things that I grew up with or my mom grew up with, and I was like calling my mom and asking her different things and like, do you know what LPs are and all this stuff? And she's like, yeah, I remember what LPs are. And it was just cool to see how much history, and like then we had a play that played with this history and like what it meant to be a Black man in America. And that was just very interesting and a fun experience for me.
Hello, my name is Shahmad Muhammad and I play the role of Griff. What touched me about this piece was that how relevant it is to what's going on in the world today, especially the things that happened this past summer. And I noticed like within the script, like my favorite part of the play was when the moment where Tiny enters and the men around us are like, are you kidding me? Like, he's so young, like, how is this like possible? And I remember that resonated with me because that's exactly how I would feel, like my family and friends would feel when we would see like another slain, like young Black man or Black woman on TV. So with that, how that is scripted within the play and how it like mirrors like what is happening in our real lives, it was just really like a challenge to really have those emotions and not go too deep to where I get sucked into my personal feelings for what has been happening, but also be connected enough to tell this story for people who are not as aware or like people who are not like as connected to be more connected and like really understand what we're talking about, what we're saying.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I played Tiny in the show. This process was kind of crazy. I love my cast. It was so cool to act with such a small cast. There's only 4 of us. And I think having such a tight little group, it allows you to be, you get more exposure with them and you get more time to build these relationships with each other. And over the process of rehearsal, I felt that connection. The difficulty of navigating Zoom was really interesting because in our acting, we're taught that the test of our abilities within our scene partner. And it was interesting to not have our scene partners with us in the room. We had to hear them through our laptops, which was really interesting. I think Tiny is a character I relate to a lot. He brings this innocence to the conversation. And as a child, when I grew up, I felt the same. I'm mixed. I grew up in New York in a predominantly white neighborhood, and I always felt confused about why these issues happened and why tension is what it is. And I do feel that characters that are young, like Tiny, we assume they don't understand, but they do. They just have different ways of articulating it.
I'm Sarah Nicholson, and I was the stage manager for this production. And walking into it, I didn't really know, I can speak from a technical perspective, that I didn't really know what a Zoom reading would entail. And I know for me, it was navigating an entirely different set of problems and issues and just a way of working than I ever would have in person. Like, we had an actor get permanently locked out of a Zoom call, and we had to start a new Zoom call in the middle of a rehearsal. And instead of calling cues like I normally would, I was playing the laugh track and helping them space out timing. And thankfully they edited out my audio. Y'all did not want to hear that. But that was what my job looked like rather than what I was used to. But I think in a lot of ways, it made me a better stage manager because it condensed like what I do to the truest elements of like communication and making sure everyone's on the same page, because it's really hard to do that when you're not all in the same room. So I thought that was really, really fun and really interesting. And given the state of the world right now, like, it was a fun way to exercise those skills. And with this group and the script, which is so powerful, it was really just the best possible virtual experience I could have hoped for.
Hi, I'm Bea, and I directed the piece. And I'm just really grateful that we are able to bring these pieces to you through this Zoom experience, because I'm not sure that we would have been able to do that if we hadn't had this this venue to be able to do it. This is just an amazing piece, and James Imes is an incredibly clever playwright, and how he mixes humor and tragedy and sarcasm and history, and packs it in this small piece, and then adds the names of all of these young men and women who lost their lives senselessly, needlessly, because of the color of their skin. I'm just grateful to be able to share that experience with you. And I just want to also give a shout out and just a lot of praise to Tim and Bert and Lindsay and Rob, because they made this experience happen for all of these shows. And I'm very grateful for their creativity. And I was lucky I had a great cast, so that helped as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Anything else before we move on? Any other final thoughts about the process and what it meant to you? Awesome. We have got a question. We've got one question from Emily. Oh, we've got two now. So here we go. Emily asks, what were the differences in addressing the watching audience in the play through a camera versus through an in-person setting? Do y'all feel like it worked equally well, or better, or worse? Which I think is, yeah, it's an interesting question, thinking about this is a meta-theatrical piece. It breaks the fourth wall a lot. And so what does that mean now that it's the fourth wall is like this thing, it's the screen, right? Like, what does that mean? That's a really good question, Emily. Thanks.
I don't think there's a difference between looking out into a real audience and looking into our camera on our computer. And I think it added, I won't necessarily say that it was worse, but it was different. It was, because we had to use our imagination to look out into like an audience and really picture people there, besides like, doing it live and there actually being an actual audience where you can really see people. So yeah.
I think, like, as actors, we are taught to like give energy, get the energy back, this like tennis court match almost. And without someone else there, you kind of lose that in a way. But I think through this live form that we're taking, making it direct, because like when I look at the camera, it looks like I'm looking directly at you. So I think in that aspect, it makes it very direct. And you're at home by yourself, and then I suddenly look directly at you. So I think in those times, it makes it very personal, but there's still something different about live theater and being in the room with someone else to be like, there's nowhere you can go. I'm in the room, you're in the room, and I'm looking right at you. There's still a difference that you can't get through this live forum.
I would say that I would agree, but I would also say that I think we were successful in engaging with the audience through the virtual space. I was just sitting with my family on the couch watching me, and that was weird. But I was sitting next to my family, and there were moments where we would engage with the audience, and they would feel it. They'd be like, "Is he talking to me?" I'm like, I think it we do have that connection still.
Yeah, Emily mentioned in the comments that from their point of view, it definitely felt like very personal because the laptop is so much closer to your face. And I think also y'all did such a good job of looking straight at the camera, which kind of at moments was like very confrontational and gave me chills. So that was really great. Any other thoughts about the sort of meta theatrical aspect of the piece?
Well, I was just going to say, Chloe and I were talking before we were live about how I think this piece works well in this medium, in that it's so expansive, and it has that sort of built-in reach to it. It's not linear in any way, so a lot of the layers of theatricality I think really work. Here, or whether we're in a space. So it's a nice piece like that. I think that's what's the beauty of the piece.
My theater history students know I love the weird stuff. So I was all there for it. I was so there for it. It was great. This is kind of a related question from Claudia. When you were rehearsing and recording, did y'all find any sort of unexpected silver lining? What about the process was positive and not something you thought would happen?
For me, going into this, because I did Blood at the Root earlier, and going into this, I thought we were going to be sitting in front of our computers and just reading our scripts on our computers, and then B's like, all right, let's stand up and back away from the camera. And I was like, wait, what? And so I think in that aspect, it made it more like live theater to me. I felt a little bit more active almost, and it gave me more motivation to like try to connect with my other scene partners and try to get away from the script almost and try to see what is actually happening in that moment and how can I create these moments even though I'm in my bedroom by myself.
I'll go. I would think that it was really interesting because it wasn't quite a reading and it wasn't quite on stage. It was this weird in between, and it was a challenge, but I think it was fun to see how far, what can we achieve with just this space that we have. And it was kind of crazy to talk to people that weren't really there in the room with me and imagine the space around me. It was interesting.
It was almost like we were still having that process as if we were alive. So it felt nice to like, try to get out the book as much as we could to like even though like Gerald was not right next to me, like I was staring at a wall, it was still nice to pretend like as if he were right there, or like McCoy below me and stuff like that. So that was nice.
I could say too, it was really cool. And I think B, you could add to this if you wanted to, that I watched y'all and we all watched you get to like make that discovery in real time. Because when we had before we started rehearsal, we had a tech fitting basically to make sure like their cameras worked right and their lights were all fine. And y'all were all really awkward actors. Like you weren't quite sure what to do with the moving around because you had, like most of y'all had done Blood at the Root or the other shows. But by the end, when y'all figured out where to look for the different people and how to do that, y'all really, really blossomed into it, which was cool for me because I got to change how I like read the stage directions and just how I ran the room, as it were, because y'all got so into it, and that made everybody else's job really easy, I think.
I think that with this kind of, when in this medium, I just got finished doing sweat at a company. It's important to try and create some kind of ensemble, even though you're by yourself. And if you can remember that you do have those other people sort of passing the ball to you and handing you that energy, I think that makes you feel a little less alone. I think everybody starts out this process, like you said, with the walls here and but what I did enjoy about watching these actors is that they started kind of trying things with each other and responding to each other, after about the first rehearsal or so. It was I think. I think that's one of the keys to this, is to really work to make actors feel like they're not by themselves, but they are working with a group.
Yeah, and y'all have started to answer this question a little bit. One of the questions that has been queued up. So I want you to speak a little bit more on it. Sarah, you mentioned sort of, how did the actors know where to look? What kind of planning went into looking at each other, and how did you manage that? Because I don't even know.
For me, I put tape on the wall, and each like piece of tape, like Shahmad was a square and McCoy was a circle, and Lucas was just below me, so I didn't have to like worry about where Lucas was. But I put them there, and then I would watch. We got recordings of each rehearsal, and I would watch them, and I'd be like, okay, so that's how they're trying to react to this moment, how they're reacting to this, and then I took that in, and then I applied that to that, and I kind of had to imagine and suspend my disbelief and like see Shahmad in my living room right there doing something that he may have been doing.
Are you saying Shahmad is a square?
I think the biggest thing is I mean, it is camera. It's camera work. So if you can approach it that way, and you have to mark things in the same way that you mark things on a set. And when you're doing acting on a set, a lot of times you don't have the other actor there, so you have to mark it, and you have to have that huge imagination. And we did spend a lot of time going, this is where you should be looking, this is where this moment should be. And Tim was very helpful with that in creating the the squares and the movement and that sort of thing to help us stay on track. But yeah, I think it is it's a hybrid. It's half camera, half live theater. So they did a wonderful job of watching the recordings and staying on track with all of that. They were pretty amazing.
I think.
Sorry, Lucas, go right ahead. I was just gonna say the precision was really impressive.
Thank you. I do agree with Gerald of what he said earlier. I was considering at one point printing out a picture of Gerald's face, sticking it to my ceiling, and remember to look up there. But I think a lot of it, knowing where to look, was helpful with remembering our scene partners' lines. So I would go back, remember what I was saying, remember what they were going to say, how they were going to react to it, and then where would they be. A lot, like there was this one part where Gerald makes fun of me. I imagine he's laughing at me. He's probably jumping around. I know how to look around a little bit.
I think that was the one problem that I did have with this forum, was because in theater, sometimes your partner will come in the next day and do something completely different, and then you just have to react in the moment. And with this, you really couldn't do that, because also we weren't looking at each other. So I was looking here most of the time. So I could never see what Shahmad was actually doing. I just had to assume and like hear his voice inflections and stuff like that. So that's the only problem that I had with that.
Yeah, tonight was the first time I saw some of the reactions from my classmates because I was just not looking at the computer. So yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point. Like, that's how you make it work. Y'all are blowing my mind right now. You can't look at each other, because that's the whole, oh, wow, that's a challenge. surmounted that in this process. Bravo. Great. Any other thoughts about where to look and how to mark and these things? Cool. So the next question is a personal question. So I think just take care of your own personal boundaries and however much you want to share in terms of your own personal biographies. But Shahmad was talking about this a little bit in terms of protecting yourself and not going too deep. So I think Andre's question kind of leans into that a little bit more. Andre says, awesome job. As Black men, have you experienced some of the walking, driving, etc. while Black moments? If so, how did you use it in this piece?
Me personally, I have multiple times throughout my life, and it was at first when I was by myself reading it, I was like, how am I even gonna start doing this? But I think with the cast and the director and everyone that was there to help us get through those moments, and I knew that I was in a safe place to like be able to think about and talk about these things. So I think that helped me in a way. But yeah, at times it was hard, and some of the things that would come up, like the list. Oh, the list. Yeah, some stuff was difficult.
I would say some stuff, yes, has happened to me. And it was more growing up to where I didn't really understand what was going on. But in recent years, because of everything that has happened, I have developed this more sense of like being more aware of my surroundings. And also it establishes fear within me to do certain things because of how, you know, police have responded to people and what has, you know, what is basically like what is focused around display. So it was reading it, especially when it comes to the list, it was hard to sit through to really, because like when you're reading, when we get to the list part, it's so long, and that's not even all of them. So I remember sitting through this, I was like, wow, this is really long. And I'm sitting, I'm like, this isn't just like the half of it. It's not even half, just like a little portion of it. And once you, as that's going on, you realize, wow, this is really long, and you realize how much more it is. It's really sad. So yeah.
I've also experienced moments like that in my life as well. Conveniently enough, they were also when I was a lot younger too, like Tiny. Um, it was not. It was a little difficult to go through some parts, like the list. Just listening to it was, it hurts a little bit. And my monologue, especially I think it's the desperation of trying to explain the confusion and the frustration of how could this happen. I remember feeling that feeling at certain points in my life, the confusion, the frustration, and it does feel good to perform something like this. It's like it's giving a voice to something that I feel like I haven't been able to speak upon on my own.
What was hard for me was having to add the names from this summer to the list. That was hard because that was hard. I mean, it's already long enough. And then we have to put these other names there. And what is also hard is to know that people that do this show will have to add more names to it unless this stops. That's hard.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to leave a little bit of space for these things to kind of sink in, because y'all are really sharing a lot. And the list is really the list. It's one of the center pieces of this play, and it's a living, growing thing, and it's monstrous. So thank you all for sharing that. I think this next question is actually a sort of beautiful follow-up to the conversation that we're having right now, which is what impact do you hope this show has on your audience?
I hope this helps people to really start to like listen and really see, just open their eyes to what is happening. Yeah.
It's nothing new. It's been happening for years. And I just want people to, for the people who are like wasn't already like paying attention, to really like see this play and see what it is and what it's trying to say, so they can have a better understanding what's going on, and maybe have like, so they can feel something themselves and think, oh, what can I do? What can be done for this to stop?
Personally, I hope this play speaks to all walks of life. For people who are unaware, I hope it reveals the truth. And for the Black community, I hope it reminds us that we must maintain our hope and our strength.
Any other thoughts about the impact of this show? I think even the silence is revealing as well. So I appreciate all that. Great. Let's move back into thinking about some of the technical aspects of the show. I really liked Claudia's question because Lucas, you started to talk about it a little bit when you were reflecting on watching yourself, which again, theater history professor loves some meta theater. So you're just really lighting me up right now. But what else did y'all think when you saw the full production with the added sound, backgrounds, visual effects? Was it what you imagined?
The sitcom.
The sitcom. Oh my god! Because like I was like, what? This is spot on. I was like, they really did that. They really did that. And even the other parts of, because it can be hard sometimes when they're like, okay, now Gerald, you're gonna sit here for 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh gosh, how is this gonna look? But the elements all together, it worked. It worked. So bravo.
If I can piggyback, the monster. Like, so a little inside baseball, we recorded all of their lines for that separately, and then they edited, our Lindsay Putnam, our sound designer, incredible, edited them all together and put the distortion on them. We had never heard that before. Like, it literally just sounded like their normal voices. There was none of the like earthquake stuff that was happening. And I got scared, and I had read this play like dozens of times. That blew my mind.
I think it was weird to go into watching this show and be like, okay, I know it's gonna happen. I was in it, and then all the editing gets piled on top, and then I find myself, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? But it was so cool. The monster, I was scared again, but it was all the layering and the sound effects and the music. It was good. It was so good, and I think it's like, it was just really cool. It was really cool. And the sitcom again, like I was like taken aback. I'm like, oh my god, it's so cool.
Yeah, B and I were talking before we all gathered here today about the slinkiness of the genre of this play. Like, there's moments that are achingly funny, and then the next moment you're just devastated by sadness and grief, and it's, you know, it's interesting that we can sort of be pulling from such deep wells of experience in the same show. Like, it's really wild. The effects definitely played those moments up. Great. So another question from Claudia, which I think builds on this, is there anything from this process, and this is across the board, so acting, stage management, directing, that y'all learned that you can bring into live production when it's safe to gather again indoors, in person?
I would say use of space and moving my body more, because I know for a note for me was still like to use my arms, and I thought that was harder given the space, but it was still possible. So hopefully when I'm back performing in person, I will utilize that more, since I have this more of a space to and freedom to.
I think a lot, like with the camera work, it really, because in theater, live theater, you don't really look at yourself. Like, you probably never look at yourself besides like the photos that they post. But with this, you have to look at yourself. You have to see what you're doing, all the little habits that you have. So I think there's like a need for clarity for all my performances from now on, to like see what am I doing and is that telling the story that I need to tell. So I think that's why I took from this.
For me, it was keeping my energy up. There was also, again, the challenge of not being in the same room with everyone. You really gotta keep it up, because they're not really there to feed it to you anymore. So I think that's definitely something. It was a challenge that we had to overcome, but I feel like now we have more of this grounded sense of we have to keep this up even when we're doing live performances. That sense of energy.
For me, stage management is and has always been about communication, but it's a lot harder to communicate well when you never actually see the people you're talking to and you're never in person. Like, normally if we were in Theater UCF, I could like walk down the PAC hallway and be like, hey, make sure you get your costume fitting or whatever they need to do, but like I couldn't do that. So I had to figure out how to send a lot of emails without being annoying, and and how to communicate myself clearly in like that regard, and also just in Zoom, that kind of stuff, and also like paying more attention, because taking blocking is one thing, but taking blocking when you're figuring out who's looking at who and where are they on the screen, and figuring out where like sound happens, and I was reading stage directions, so being able to do everything all at once, I think it made me more like ambidextrous, I guess, in terms of doing all of the things at the same time. Yeah.
B, do you already have all the skills you need as a director?
No, I need a lot more than that.
I don't know.
I love film anyway. I love trying to. I've always enjoyed that sort of marriage of theater and film, and I think that oftentimes when I direct my shows, I have that sort of film energy in mind when I'm directing it. So to be able to actually do this and to and I think Gerald said it really well, that that sense of clarity in telling the story, I think, is so valuable, and I think something that we could all use more of. And how just a simple movement and what it says.
I was amazed at the sense of an ensemble that y'all were able to create, socially distant. I think this is a great question from Andre to sort of end the evening, because this has been a long process for y'all. I'm sure everyone is ready to get some good rest. But this is a question about the future and hope. So let's think about it together. Andre asks, since it was mentioned that this was the first Black play of this type, are there other Black plays that you hope to do in the near future? Other pieces that come to mind that inspire you
Well, I can answer that easily. I'm right now in the middle of directing Hands Up, Seven Testaments, Seven Playwrights, Seven Testaments. And that's an amazing piece, seven monologues about this experience of getting stopped by the cops, being racially profiled, how women are part of this. So one of the wonderful things I think that has come from this summer is that we are finally recognizing the need to produce Black theater more than once every 2 or 3 years, or maybe once a year for Black History Month. We're recognizing that there's a canon out there that Black playwrights need to be right alongside Williams and Albee in their work, and that they have been there all along, but just have not been recognized. So that's, to me, it's so wonderful to see. I'm involved in the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, and seeing all of these shows that are being registered this semester, and how many of them finally are by African American playwrights. And so this has got to keep going. There's just no reason why an African American student should go for 2 or 3 years and not do a show that is totally with an African American cast, written by an African American playwright, directed by an African American. There's just not enough of that. Yeah, there just isn't, and it's time, and I'm glad that that's happening. So
My thing with this is, in the past, when we do get Black shows, it usually deals with racial issues, and I do appreciate those, and those plays are important and should be heard. But I also would like to do plays with Black casts that just focus on Black beauty and Black excellence within general, because we are so much more than what is happening, like the trauma that comes with being Black in America. So in the future, I would just love to, like, because I know they're out there. I know there are wonderful playwrights who are just writing just stuff that's not like based on trauma, just like the beauty of being Black. So I'd love to do those.
For me, just throwing it out there, I would love to do Pipeline. If anyone wants to throw that around. Pipeline. Yes, that's
By Dominic Morso.
yes.
We'll get a sign-up sheet going, and you'll have your cast by 10 p.m. Any other thoughts, y'all, about futures of new works and ideas and plays? Awesome. Well, this has been so enlightening. There's a lot of death in this play, literally and figuratively. And James Imes sort of presents us with characters that are coming to terms with their own deaths. And I think if we think about death as a metaphor right now, I think a lot of people are sort of having deaths of parts of themselves, especially white people, trying to sort of relinquish some of the privilege that we've been sort of grasping onto. And sometimes death can be a good thing in those cases, right? I mean, theater is a thing that dies every night. It's ephemeral, right? It's just constantly dying. And so, I wonder if there's other ways that we can start thinking about this beyond the pain and suffering, like what Shahmad's talking about, right? Thinking to the future of joy and beauty and excellence. So thank y'all so much for spending this time with us. That's what I'm going to be sort of marinating in. And thank y'all so much, attendees, for joining us and asking brilliant questions, and for watching the show and supporting our department. In 2 weekends, we have another show coming up on November 7th at 7 p.m. It's our final main stage play reading of our season, our 2020, I should say, not our season. And that's going to be a virtual reading of Ranjit Bolt's modern verse translation of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. So I hope to see y'all there. And thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Get some rest. See you at the next UCF theater event. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you, B. Thanks, Bridget, for running this.
Everybody stay safe.
Yeah, definitely. Stay safe and take care.